Sometimes I feel like an assassin. Me. I load up my car with all my sometimes an assassin. People call me. I load up my car with all my goodies and my little toolbox and things, and I go some strange state. Car with all my goodies and my little toolbox and things, and I go some strange state and I kill people. I am a hired killer. People hire me to design and carry out gruesome deaths. Whether the murder weapon is a machete, murder weapon machete, or a pair of hands, a screwdriver, a spear, a helicopter, or simply that old standard shotgun.
Tom's devoted to it, and he doesn't flinch, and he goes for it. He just goes for it.
Anyone care for some runny beef?
We too look at him as probably one of the best and one of the innovators of all the really weird innovators of all the weird, gross stuff. Weird, gross stuff. One of the best and one of the innovators of all the really weird, gross stuff going on in the industry.
If I had to choose one word for Tom, it would be fun.
Get out of my head. The 1 minute he'll be. Get out of my head. Get out of my head. The 1 minute he'll be working, and the next minute he turns around with a Hudson sprayer full of blood and you're soaked. You know?
Yeah, he loves to scare people.
Tom is more than a makeup man. He's a personality.
Also, he does obviously have a real flair. Obviously, his
Makeup man. He's a man. Tom is personality. More than he's a person.
he does
More
also he does obviously have a real flair for no holds barred gruesomeness.
I want to escape. Why do people laugh at this stuff? I'll mention their stuff. I mean, here's something to provide a look into another dimension. Everyone says, how can you laugh? Why do people laugh at this stuff? I mean, here's somebody being torn in half and people are laughing. And I guess you can't understand that unless you're into it, you know? It's like why do people laugh on a roller coaster ride? Some people don't. Some people don't. I guess you can't. It's like, you know, I guess you can't understand people. Stand to it, not laugh. You can't understand on a laugh to it. Unless people, I mean, here's somebody being torn in half and people are laughing. I guess you can't understand that unless you're into it, you know. It's like why do people laugh on a roller coaster ride? Some people don't. In fact, probably most people get sick on roller coaster rides and get headaches and throw up and everything else. But the people that love them, and they get in there and they laugh and scream and because the experience is everything. And experience is in the get in, scream, people on everything else, everything up the ride goes to headaches and love them, and they get in there and they laugh and scream, and because the experience makes you exuberant. That's what Tom and I share, is that revelry.
With me, it's like watching the masters. I mean, you can't help but learn from people like Hitchcock, Woody Allen, and De Palma, and George Romero. My first inspiration as far as doing makeup was Lon Chaney. Lon Chaney first doing makeup was Lon Chaney Sr., the silent screen star, makeup artist, stuntman, actor, you know. He flipped me out. I saw a movie called Man of a Thousand Faces in this theater, the Plaza Theater, when I was 12 years old, and I flipped out. I had a makeup kit. And I flipped out. I had a makeup kit. I used to go to my relatives' houses and make myself up, and they would look at me and wonder why I was doing this, you know, put a tattered shirt on or a bandana and make my face brown, and I'd stand there like this, you know, and they'd say, very nice, why are you doing this, you know? Then I would steal lipsticks out of my mother's purse, you know, and just anything I get my hands on to do makeup. And I was just this little Italian kid loafing on the corner before that. And I saw this movie and it was like, hey, I can be different people through makeup, you know? The whole world opened up, a bunch of new characters opened up. Whenever Chaney opened up his makeup box, the Phantom of the Opera, the Hunchback, I started reading about what has been called the myth of Lon Chaney, that he would suffer so much for his art, you know, with harnesses that would strap him down for the Hunchback. And physically, he would like really be hanging from those gargoyles. It changed my life. From that moment on, from that day on, I became a new person. I no longer hung out on the corners. I was hanging out in my bedroom. I was bugging my mother for supplies, money for supplies, you know. I shined shoes in this neighborhood to buy makeup. Yeah, I was the only white kid that was shining shoes in Bloomfield. You know. In the I neighborhood to buy makeup, you know. Was shining kid, you know. Then it was like after the army, it became a career move, a thing to do for a living, you know, which I never thought was possible, because I was always a Bloomfield kid.
And that truly comes from Tom.
Because I never thought was Bloomfield kid. Because I was always, which I never thought was a Bloomfield kid.
And I think if there's anything that truly comes from Tom's being inspired by Chaney, it's a devotion.
He was an actor, a stuntman, a makeup artist, all the things I wanted to be. And I only wanted to be those because of Lon Chaney. You know, my son's name is Lon. I named him after Lon Chaney. So it was like a really strong, powerful influence.
Martin was the first time I actually picked up effects.
We started
of doing special effects.
We started to talk and chat, and he said, you know, we're
influence. The first time.
We started to talk and chat, and he showed me his book, and I said, you know, we're going to do this thing called Martin. And he said, oh, he'd love to do the effects in it. And that's the first time that we would do the effects. He said, oh, he'd love to do the thing. That's the time we started and chat, and he showed me his book, and you know, we're going to do this thing called Martin. And he said, oh, he'd love to do the effects in it. And that's the first time that we worked together. Hey, freak this. It's all all out in the office. I think he might have said, I solved the problem of He freaked us all out in the office. I think he might have said, I solved the problem of how Martin can slice the girl's wrist. You know, all we have to do is actually do it. And he held up a razor blade and went whap like that, and it bled all over the floor. And everyone just, you know, really freaked out.
But when Martin is killed with a stake in the heart at the end, you know, I thought of, how the hell are we going to do that? Again, it was the old procedure. What do we need to see to make the audience believe that this happened? And I had a syringe, a rectal syringe, filled with blood that I would just squeeze so it would fly into the air against the actor who was pounding the stake in.
Your soul is damned. Nosferatu.
Now, on the first take, I squeezed this, and the blood, like Yellowstone National Park, the geyser went straight up in the air, hit the ceiling, and just spread blood everywhere. Never touched the actor. That, of course, was a cut, bad take. Had to clean the whole room, change the sheets, everything.
Weapons. Weapons are easy. This is one of them. Just, looks like I hope it looks like I'm cutting my neck here. See, it's just cutting out the whole. You know, one approach would be, well, let's get a fake head, and take a knife and cut its throat. Well, my idea is to use as much of the real actor in the effect as possible, because the real actor can, you know, make faces, make his eyes move. Fake head just sits there. Then we just pump blood that would come streaming over the weapon, which looked like it was coming out of the person.
All right, action, come on, a little struggle.
This is a bayonet that we used in the Prowler. This was real effective in the Prowler. The reason these are varying lengths is because we start with the long one, cut away to something, cut back, and this one's in there. So in your mind, you know, we've gone in further. It's a sick business, I realize that. So the idea is, what do I need to see to make me believe that I'm seeing this happen, okay? Then step by step, we think it through, and decide, well, that's what we have to show the audience. So I approach the director with this and say, to make this illusion work, I think you need this, you need that, you need this. He agrees, he disagrees, we argue, I win, and then we do it, you know.
All right, here's what we're going to do first, though. I'm going to put this blood in his mouth.
And, you know, here's poor Ned. You know, he gets a shears stuck through his neck.
I was excited. I mean, it's, you know, it was like, great, a job finally. They took a big wooden board and they set it up exactly like the raft I was laying on. And they had a hole in there for me to put my head through.
And I've got the shears positioned right above his eyeballs here, and I'm slapping blood around his mouth.
And I got a little worried because there's ADs walking around and PAs, and different people have these shears in their hands.
If something went wrong, there's nothing, his hands are locked behind
PAs, and different people have these shears in their hands.
If something went wrong, there's nothing, his hands are locked behind the totally helpless position, you know.
Blood out of your mouth.
You have to watch yourself with these films, man. They can waste you in the blink of an eye for art, you know? So you gotta keep.
But you do have to be part psychologist when you're dealing with actors, you know. In Friday 13th Part 4, the teenagers were coming up to us and saying, how am I gonna die? And the more glorious their death was, the greater they felt.
And then came Friday the 13th, which completely blew the lid off and had every independent filmmaker going.
Splatter became crazy. Dawn of the Dead, you know. Friday the 13th, those two in a row, just like that. I think that's what started it all.
Tom Savini's effects were crucial to the popularity of those films.
Jason from Friday the 13th, the first one, was, I kept thinking of this guy that I saw in my neighborhood when I was a kid. He was misshapen. He had a big ear that was pushed down here, and it was lower than the other ear. So he needed to be retarded, needed to be hydrocephalic or a pinhead or something like that, you know. So if you can do that and make it look like there's bone structure beneath all these deformations, then the audience buys it. I stood outside of a theater waiting to walk in to watch this movie, and I heard the whole theater scream at the top of their lungs. And I says, wow, you know. So I go in, I forget all about the audience screaming, and then we all scream when Jason came up. So
The point is, it worked. You felt something.
By far the most popular figure, for better or worse, has been Jason, has been the masked, psychotic, deformed killer. Readers write in describing Jason as if they're talking about Willie Mays.
I chose it because they called it the final chapter, and I got to kill Jason. I gave him birth in part one. It's like a Frankenstein syndrome. I'm taking care and killing my monster that I created, okay? Plus, they paid me a fortune. My old friend Jason has been sliced, diced. I mean, he's been killed 58 times. Sliced, diced. I mean, he's been killed 58 times. I wanted him to be ugly, you know. In my mind, Jason had to look like a 38-year-old version of the kid, you know, from part one. But it involved doing a whole sculpture of a whole head and then breaking it down into individual appliances to be stuck on to the actor. And I had never done anything like that, but Dick Smith had. Dick Smith, by the way, is the master, the greatest makeup artist in the world. Finally won an Academy Award that he's deserved for 40 years, you know. Dick Smith, when he invents a technique, he'll write it down, then he'll type it up, then he'll mimeograph it, and send it off to us, you know, if we ask, you know. He shares, you know, the secrets. If it wasn't for him, the state of the art would not be where it is today. We gotta kill Jason, but it's gotta be dramatic. 4 movies this guy's been rubbing out teenagers, you know, now it's his turn to get it. So I had this machete from Dawn of the Dead that we used to, you know, split the guy's head, you know. So I said, that's it, that's how we'll kill Jason.
Jason!
No way to slide down a machete, realistically, unless we you know, do a traveling mat or something, you know. So we had to do it mechanically. So we built this thing. We tested it over and over and over again with water, you know, for the bleeding. But the idea of somebody getting hit and then sliding down the blade, what a payoff. They were screaming their lungs off. And there's our reward. You know, we have to wait a year later to get our reward, and there it was, and it was worth it. Gotten quite a bit of notoriety about the splatter movies. Notoriety came, I assume, with the subject matter. If I said I was proud of doing the slasher movies, there would be people who would say, how dare you, you know, and all that. But I am. My job is to take what they write down and create it, make it happen believably, you know, on the screen. So, you know, I think I do my job well. Those people who say that we are the modern, you know, practitioners of stuff, it's not true, because it was happening a long time ago.
There was, in the late 1800s, kind of a rage for violent theater. The Grand Guignol, unlike any other theater in the world, as a general rule, would do that act of violence in plain view of the audience. They would do that act of violence for violent theater. Any other theater in the world, as a general rule, would do that act of violence in plain view of the audience. There were eye gougings, there were beheadings, there were guillotines, there was acid put in somebody's face would be pushed down on a hot plate, arrows would be shot into somebody, they would be blown up, they would be burned alive, there would be an outpouring of blood. People would faint at the theater from what they saw. The Grand Guignol has been dramatized into films and so on, has been presented in films. It's more the influence that it did, which was that people saw this kind of theater, and were influenced and were influenced and were put in the film and were influenced to try the next step, which was to go into films.
So I think people that are into horror, particularly graphic horror, get a rush out of it that you can't explain. I'm not sure why. Not. It's either that. Really. That's my. Really not. It's that prurient desire to see the moment of death.
Guys like the Maniac or the Friday the 13th ripoffs, those creeps, guys like that really do exist outside. It's a little weird because I'll get letters with pictures from 13-year-old kids, with, knives through their heads, and they've got stuff glued to those ones supposed to be guts, and they're trying to impress me with the splatter stuff.
I think every time a new Friday the 13th movie comes out, I get at least 2 or 3 letters that are almost, each time, which are almost identical. And it's always some kid writing in, asking, where can I get a hockey mask like Jason wears in the Friday the 13th movies? Which I think is an example of how involved they are, because obviously they've never seen a hockey game before or a sporting goods store. I guess the most extreme would be the messages that include something to the effect that I love to see girls get chopped up.
I don't think it's going to cause anyone to go out and commit a crime. I think, in fact, it might act as a fuse and prevent somebody from going out and committing a crime.
Perhaps I'm relying on the fact that the kids, quote unquote, know that this stuff, isn't real. Obviously, they're going to see the latest creation. It's like, what's the latest painting from so-and-so in this gallery? What's the latest atrocity or creature or monster? Maybe it's an art form, I don't know.
If you're into this genre and if you love it, it's not traumatizing. It's a good time.
Just a couple words, you can describe it as cheap thrills.
And we simply put the explosive charge, put that in the middle there. Put the explosive charge, put that in the middle there. So charge in the pay. There. This way it explodes person. Away. This way it explodes out and away. Explodes out and away. I'm here, my dear.
This is what wives are made for.
Okay, now we test it. We're gonna make this a juicy one. Up against the wall.
You never know how the charge is going to hit, what it's going to feel like, which way the blood's going to go. Is it going to go in your eye? Is it going to go in your mouth? Is it going to burn you? And that's the impossible stuff to call.
It worked, Greg. Yeah. It worked. The other thing we forgot to give her earplugs.
I cannot hear a thing.
What'd you say?
Yeah, they are.
See this detonator box here? If we were doing a machine gun hit, we go. But, I can't complain because for me, hell, it's a living. I fucking bite the hand that feeds me. However, there are, things I personally want to do, and that is do the creatures and the monsters and the fantasy things. The things that I saw when I was a kid, and we knew they didn't exist outside.
Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead. I mean, everything today is zombies.
I think the effects in this are superior to the stuff in Dawn of the Dead. Technically. In Day of the Dead, I had 6 guys working for me. 3 months before we started shooting, we did elaborate zombie. We're making generic zombie appliances, small, medium, and large.
At the beginning of the shoot, they handed me a list. It had a date, and it had how many zombies they needed on that date. So it's like November 6th, 375 zombies. When you're putting it on, it's kind of like you have 20 people you have to do. Okay, and you have so much time to do them. So it's like they stick the brush in the glue and they go, and they put the implants on. I mean, it's fast. At the end of the day, getting the glue off, it's like, you know, it was very, very painful. When I was taking it off, I was holding her up and she just fell. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And she just fell. And I just, you know, I sat her down and gave her some water or something, and she was okay.
We've never really had any problem with people on the set having compunctions about the gore. We never have any problems recruiting zombies. Everyone wants to be a zombie, and not only do they want to be a zombie, but they want to be a zombie that has a horrible wound or a zombie that gets to eat.
They want to get in the front line and get close to the camera if they're eating something. Especially when they know what it is. Like, we also had these long homemade sausage things that looked like these intestines. You know? I mean, some of the actors were actually chewing on, you know, bones and things from slaughterhouses, you know, been sitting around for a long time. But mostly it was turkey, chicken, bologna, ham, hot dogs that we decorated with this barbecue sauce that looked a lot like blood. Mainly that, or they would be chewing on just pieces of rubber, you know, like, what do we have here? Here's a latex lower intestine here. Here's chunks of flesh. Now, chunks of flesh was something that we would just whip together, and whenever we needed it, we would stick it in something so that when a piece of a person came off or a head was torn off, you know, see, this stuff just stretches nice. And it's pretty sick, I know, but
still has motor function.
To prove a point in the movie, that a zombie, even just with the brain intact, would still function. I mean, this was attached to a guy to look like, you know, everything to look